Hi, this is the Drupal usability meeting for March 5th, 2020. And we're going to look at an issue about the editor role, a beta blocker about less removed update hooks, and one more update manager issue. We'll see how that goes. Who wants to start?
Do you know if Angie is joining? Because if she's joining later, maybe we can just keep the editor one for later.
I don't know, but I would hope that she's joining. She's normally available at this time.
Okay, I'm gonna ping her on Slack.
She said yes to the invite, but I don't know if that was for today or in general. Pinged her.
Hello.
Hi, Afra.
Hi.
Angie is coming, I think.
Has Zoom changed their interface a little bit?
What do you mean?
I don't know, it just feels a bit different, maybe? Never mind.
I don't know.
Probably just me.
All right, so who wants to start? Now Angie, we have Angie, so we can even start with the editor role.
Sorry, I got sucked into email.
We'll go to start with that if you want. Okay. Let me check the issue. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so basically
For
it's
the recording, the issue number is 3059984.
Thank you. So for having a little bit of context, this issue was created a while ago while after doing the survey with several content editors and site builders, and a survey that we did for, I think, around 200-300 people answered. And one of the things that came up was that there were several things that needed to be different for site builders. Well, sorry, for content editors. So we ideally should come up with several solutions for this specific kind of role, but we are not able to do that unless we have this role on place. So it's coming from the admin Y initiative. And we discussed that on the ideas issue. We came up with this name because it was better than just editor alone. And several things that we propose here were like giving permissions to create content, use basic HTML, and publish content. And all this together will help adding new features, like, for example, having a dashboard for the content editor, maybe having a special menu for creating content. I don't know, several things could be done thanks to this. I think there were like a list of things. I'm not really sure if we listed it here. No, we don't. We didn't list it here. This is exactly the issue for creating the editor role. Yes, there is this meta issue, which is 3059986, which is a meta issue for discussing what features could be added to this content editor role. And some of them, I didn't. No. Okay, to do. Perfect. Great, Christina. I think there should be the ideas. Okay, here. I think somewhere here there was a list of things that might be needed. But anyway, overall, adding things like the dashboard, several features just for the content editors will be a huge improvement for these editors that don't have to see all the day the config menu, for example, or several advanced features that they don't need. And actually the interface right now is prepared for site builders mainly. So yeah, that's more or less the context. And right now the status of this issue is that there's a patch with several permissions already here, and it needs well, we tagged as release managers, and right now we need a product manager approval, and then just iterate on this. So any comments, questions? What do you think we should do from now? And
I still have concerns about the name editor, because editor typically is a content management role in a lot of other applications, so not Drupal.
So the thing is that we had this discussion about if this role is made for managing content or for creating content. And that's one of the discussions, because the thing is that where do you actually create a content? So where do you start creating from scratch a content? Most of the time it's not on a Drupal node page, add content and create the content in there. Probably you've already gone through a workflow where several people has reviewed it or something like that. So it's not just the content creator, but it's not just the content manager. So that's why this was a little bit more agnostic in that sense.
It's just that in the sites that I've built, the term editor is a person who's in charge of or determines the final content of a text, of content that has been generated. And so that's just colloquially speaking for non-Drupalists. That's a more widely accepted definition of the term editor. And the person who's creating content will typically be an editor. I mean, I will be, and yeah, I'm just concerned about the terms still. I think the role definitely makes sense, and I 100% support it. And if you need someone to review what permissions have been chosen, I can take a look at that. But conflating the two roles when we've got workspaces and we've got all of these other things in core that are workflow oriented, it concerns me that we're using a term that isn't associated with that kind of managerial aspect of content.
I think there was some data about that, but I'm not exactly sure where. I think we asked about that a while ago. I'm not really sure where.
Yeah, the comment you're looking at now.
But the challenge with that is we are asking site builders and developers. We're not asking end content creators. That's the challenge, is when we're talking about roles that have meaning outside of the application context.
Yeah, but the thing is that who is going to see that word? Actually, the site builders are the ones setting that up. I mean, if you're logging in a Drupal site, you're not seeing editor, 2 points, your name. You're just seeing your username on the top of
That's
But-
actually a good point.
I still have concerns because then what is the role that manages content in the CMS?
It depends a lot on the content, on the project. I mean, you can have projects where you have 25 people managing content, and you obviously need several layers. And there are some others where you only have one person managing content. So we can't solve all the situations. I think.
Okay. I mean, I've said my concerns, so I'll stop. Yes.
Yeah, I would say that it would be more of a concern if the role were just called editor. And I think content editor is an attempt to move away from the traditional editor role.
What would we then call the editor role if you were to add that? So assume in every large use case, so not a blog, not single user instances, what do we call that role that manages?
I'd call it a content manager. That's what I colloquially call it when I'm referring to them, like in the context of, say, reviewing the results of a migration or something like that.
I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know of a single newspaper that has a manager. They use editors that go through other people's content.
I do agree that newspapers do have that concept, but I also don't know that we should apply terminology of a dying industry to like what we do. I don't know. Like, I don't know what the right call is here. But it does seem like there was some attempt at some data-driven analysis of what, you know.
And I have to give it that.
You are correct, though, that the people being asked are the site builders and developers and not the content authors themselves. But then Christina's counter argument that that's who's going to be seeing the role is kind of compelling. It's kind of interesting.
I guess what we're asked, I'm worried that when the question is, which of these terms do you like best, it's not presenting the problem of how do you differentiate these two different types of roles?
Which one? Which two ones? Sorry, are you?
So I think the crux of Thomas's argument is that there's an editor who, for example, would get permissions like edit, own articles, maybe moderate comments, but maybe not, you know, like that kind of stuff. And then there's a content blankety blank role that gets like edit all content, edit all users, edit all comments. You know what I mean? Like the person who would kind of moderate the content of other people coming in.
There was this discussion here also on the issue, and a lot of people was asking for having these two roles instead of only one, having the author and editor, as you can see here. So it was already discussed, and we had to make a call because if we are adding two new roles and we force a lot of sites to delete configuration, I think it's worse than just leaving them to add a new one.
I guess the issue at play for me is that Drupal's an additive system, meaning that most people are going, that I have seen are aggregates of multiple roles, and munging managerial aspects, so the editing of other content, into the role of editing your own content is taking two things that are distinctly different. That in a normal state, if you've only got a single user, you still don't need to edit other people's content because you've only got a single user in that use case. In a use case where I've got more than one user, I've presented the opportunity or the requirement that they be able to manage or edit other people's content in some way, shape, or form. And that management access, when we put that all into content editor and we say content editor can do other and self, that has, it's conceptually muddy. And Drupal's built to be aggregate. So if you can manage and edit, then you have both of these roles.
I totally get what you're saying. I've actually several people said that. Has he left? Oh no, you're here. Okay, so several people said that on the issue. It's just that we need to do something as soon as possible. And then if we want to add a new role, I think it should be a separate issue. Like if we want to do the two of them, it should be another one. And then right now focus on this one.
If we have just this one, can we say that it only edits its own content?
I think it is what it's doing right now.
Yeah, I was going to ask, can we get an overview of what this is doing? You had the patch open for a second. I couldn't read that fast.
Here is
So this is a reflection of what the patch does. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay, let's look at this for a second.
It's basically own stuff.
So one of the challenges is taxonomy doesn't have own and other. And with edit terms, you actually go into the primary interface for taxonomy terms.
Yeah, but that's not a problem of the role. That's a problem on the taxonomy.
That's true.
Structure.
Yep, true.
I wonder if we have an issue for that we could look at. But so what I see here, though, is I see that this editor role, content editor, let's use words that are matching, content editor role, is what Thomas is talking about as like the simpler on a multi-site, or sorry, a multi-admin user kind of site. This is the simpler of the two.
Exactly.
Roles, to the extent possible. Like we can't control taxonomy. And then that doesn't preclude, for Thomas's point, the additiveness of if someone or we later on decide to make a content manager role or whatever we call that other role, that they could be both. The reason I'm excited about this one and this concept getting into core, especially if we later abstract it out from just being a standard profile thing to actually being a system level thing that we can make assumptions on in contrib and core and other places, is that if you were that content manager person, I'm going to use that just for the sake of content overlord, let's call it that, because it's a ridiculous saying that we would not use. If you're a content overlord person, you're also going to have the content editor role. And that means we could start hinging UX decisions off of the presence or absence of that content editor role. And I think that would be really interesting, because we could do things like make per role dashboards. We could do things like, you know, simplify the content authoring interface. We could remove lots of options from you, like this kind of thing that we could do that is really tricky to do right now in the current system.
How did we determine what was being added to this role? Things like the skip comment approval, book view printer books.
It was based on permissions on Umami, I think. I think it was based on what was done in Umami. I'm not really sure if that's exactly the same.
Yeah, it was an ongoing process, I think, combining what Umami has plus additional thoughts of general what would make sense.
Exactly.
Because it looks like then it is still conflating roles rather than focusing solely on what the individual content editor, if we're saying this is the individual user, without grand, like broader context, so only their own content. There are some things that I wouldn't allow them to skip content approval or comment approval, because that wouldn't make sense. They don't have administrative role.
Okay, then
can I make a couple of points?
Sure.
I think at this point we're targeting 9.1. So if I'm right about that, then if we make mistakes at this point, we will have time to fix them. If we decide that it should be called author rather than content editor, we will have time to make that change. And the second point is that rather than getting too far down in the weeds about which particular permissions we should include, for now, can we just agree on an approach? Should we start with something sort of minimal and anticipate that we might add more permissions later before the release, or should we go in the other direction?
I would just vote for what you just said. We can just remove a lot of things right now and add them later on.
Oh, that's perfect. That would be exactly what I would ask for. And just a good definition of what the role's job is. It may already be there at the top of this. I can't see. But just something that tells us what the guidance is, why we're making that decision. This is a single use content editor in this context, and this is why we expect them to behave this way.
So right now, this is what we have. What I've heard is comments here, but if you want to jump into the issue and suggest other things, let's say that next step on this patch is just removing these permissions. And I guess the most important part here is not which permissions we need to have right now. It's the buy-in of this issue and getting approval from basically the product manager. So we have the approval, and then this is approved, right? And we can mark it as reviewed later on. So I guess both Pavel and Angela and Angie can say something about that, or discuss it later with someone else.
Sorry, could you repeat?
I think the most important part right now is getting the product manager's approval here, because it's still waiting for that. So if we all agree on adding this role, the discussion about the permissions that we give it here, as long as they are the minimum ones, that's something that it's doable in a few days. But the approval, it's not.
Yeah, well, I definitely am whole hog approving on the content editor role, so I don't mind that at all. But it does feel like we need some degree of, you know, we can't just agree on. I agree that adding one new row in the database table. It's like we're also agreeing on the permissions, I think.
Okay.
Or we should at least agree directionally on the permissions at the same time. And
Okay.
what I'm hearing, so I guess where I'm struggling is I definitely hear Thomas's concern, but I don't understand what the delta is between what's in comment number whatever that has the list of permissions and what would be proposed to remove from that list. Because when I scan that list of permissions, it looks pretty sane to me.
It's that some of the things don't have, like, whatever the definition is of this role, there are things that are added in that are administrative. And it isn't just about content.
So you mentioned taxonomy.
Taxonomy, like taxonomy is going to have to be there until we fix taxonomy. So I'm not actually asking to remove taxonomy. I'm happy with it being there. It's more conceptually, because we talk about content editor, but content is more than just content types. And that's visible in this patch. So in this list, that's very clearly visible. But it's things like certain management aspects. Because if this is about a single user maintaining their content, an author, and we're calling them content editor, I'm not advocating for any name change. So you call it content author and you describe it as this is primarily an individual user in either a single user website or in a large multi-user. If there's a large multi-user one, then we're saying they add a new role that can manage things. We're not building it today. But then I would define this role still as this is a single user role, because then it is intact both for large sites and small sites. Conflating that with managerial information that is unnecessarily there, that's what I would remove, things that don't make a lot of sense.
Right, but what I guess I understand that perspective. What I'm asking is specifically in this list, what would you remove?
Use publish transition.
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
Use publish transition under editorial workflows. And probably some similar ones.
I don't see it.
Go up about 6.
What I don't love about that particular proposal is that then you're essentially forced to create that second role. And I feel like we could, we add that second role later, if we do, we could uncheck it here and check it over there. Well, these are just establishing defaults. Is that correct?
If you don't enable the content moderation module, then you don't need that permission.
Yes.
So I think that
But we should
that's
assume
okay.
if they do enable, the content moderation per module, presumably the people who can currently edit stuff want to eventually still be able to get their stuff on the website. And if they don't have permissions to use publish, then they can't, until and unless there's some higher role that gets access to that. So I guess I'm a little nervous to take away that specific permission because it seems like it will leave these people in a hole they can't get out of until and unless someone either assigns the admin role that permission
So-
or goes and assigns the
But-
editor. And it's just like, I feel like we're
But I have a
making a lot
question.
of like assumptions here. My assumption is that the only thing this patch does is it gives you a role with one particular machine name only if you install Drupal from today or whatever this patch is committed, and that the permissions being identified are a recommendation of starting points, but we do not prescribe anything. And they could uncheck all of them and check fucking, I don't know, manage configuration or something, and the system would not stop them from
But
doing that.
That's still that's to me that still doesn't make a whole lot of sense in that it doesn't sound like we're getting rid of the authenticated user,
Right.
right? And so defining this role so that it is built correctly moving forward and then migrating from authenticated user workflow permissions to some future managerial role makes more sense to me than asking people to have to uncheck this when they've built this from the beginning from that single user perspective. I think that what would be migrated into this role would be all of the permissions appropriate with authoring content. So in that case where you don't want to have someone authoring content for whatever reason, but just managing, that's still possible. Like I would define this cleanly so that it made sense from beginning to end. That's just the approach I'd take, so that we don't have to worry about people changing this or checking or unchecking things. And if anything gets migrated, it gets migrated out of the authenticated role as we determine as appropriate. Otherwise, we're saying moderation doesn't exist until it's enabled.
So,
It's already there for authenticated users, and if they need it, then boom.
so I know what I totally hear your concerns. It's just that this issue has been here for a while, and this is, I think it's a great chance to get that in. And I really like to finish this call today with a clear path to know what are the next steps, and it would be ideal to know on the following weeks. If we need to get rid of some permissions, I don't think that's a problem, but if we need to define the role, we should ideally know it, and it would be great to not bike shed so much on specific permissions, but on specific steps to.
Well, yeah, I agree with that, but I guess why I'm entertaining a little bit of bike shedding specific permissions is because I want to get at the crux of what Thomas is after and determine if that's worth holding this patch up or not. I don't think my stance is I don't think that it is, and the reason is because like if use publish transition is one of the issues. If you remove that, you put this editor role in a position where they can't publish their own content. They can't publish their own content when they can if a content moderation is not enabled, but the second content moderation is enabled, now all of a sudden something is removed from their ability to do things. And that
I'm only suggesting it goes into the authenticated role, that it stays where it is today. I'm saying that this role is a migration of the single user editing perspective, and it's all of the things associated with that. So if those permissions still exist authenticated until an appropriate home for them was found, if an appropriate home was found, then they'd move. But otherwise they should still be there because they aren't even operational until a module is enabled. And once it's enabled, it would see that you needed access to workflow, and unless the site builder moved it elsewhere, it would automatically be there for authenticated people, which wouldn't be any different than things are today. I'm just suggesting that this role be well defined so that we can start doing the rest of what you said, Angie, which is assuming that this is exactly how the types of behaviors we want to see from a dashboard, and knowing that this is how that thing is defined.
Mm-hmm. Does authenticated user get publish transitions permission? I don't actually know what it gets.
It would
I
have to
just
today.
clarify. This would be added to the standard profile and presumably umami. Yeah.
Yeah. For now, the proposal is just added because that was quote unquote the easiest thing we could possibly do. So,
Right.
because it's very non-controversial. It's like you're adding it to the standard profile.
Yeah. That's
People can
yeah.
opt not to use the standard profile and then nothing changes for them. What's unfortunate about that direction is that contrib can't make assumptions. It can't make logic decisions and stuff like that based on it because
Well,
there's so many if-thens and stuff. So
that's the thing. I mean, it can't, but it could if, like with the administrative role, we provided some kind of configuration to say, hey, what's your like, I don't know, editor role or something to indicate to contrib. This is the role that in the event that someone is not using standard, but they happen to have a role that's something different, or or even like a configuration that has multiple check boxes that you can say these are the editor roles. But again, it's a whole
like
bike
I
sharing.
want to say that we currently have a checkbox like that for admin role, although maybe we don't. Let me look.
We do. We just have a drop down list, but the thing about that one is that's different is that one obviously serves a very specific purpose and that it will grant every permission. This one wouldn't serve the same purpose. It'd be more of like an abstract configuration that, like you said, then contrib can rely on to know what the editor rule is, regardless of what profile is being used.
Yeah. So I think the idea was we're not doing that right now because we're trying to make a stance at what we think an editor role is and looks like. So like, I honestly, my feeling, and I'm happy to hear counter feelings. My feeling is I would love to just get this in as a stake in the ground. And then I would love to open follow-ups for things where we disagree with this list. Because I think this list is a fucking great start at what we mean by editor. And that would at least get the stake in the ground that we do want an editor role. We know that it has editory permissions and like thus. And then anything that's contentious, like this published transition or the taxonomy ones, like the fact that you can't do those per role or like own versus any, filing follow-ups for that and then addressing those on a point per point basis. But I feel like if we wait until we've addressed all of the downstream problems we could possibly have with this list, we're going to be into Drupal 11 by the time we have this role. And I would much rather get it in there so we can start making the case for this being a requirement of a CMS to have this concept. And if anything, move it to more of a first class role rather than kind of this, it's still a good patch. It's like still a great thing to do in standard profile, but the best thing to do would be to put it as a system level concept so that we could start making assumptions.
Well, I would recommend a slightly similar approach, but just that it's easier to add stuff than it is to take stuff out. So if we put the editor rule in initially with the least controversial set of permissions, and then did follow-ups to add permissions. And again, bearing in mind that if we do add stuff or remove stuff, we're only adding or removing from installation configuration, not actually affecting existing sites that are already installed. That's my assumption at least. So I don't know if it matters, but my perspective is usually it's easier to add stuff than get rid of stuff.
I'm happy either way. I'm just asking that we have a good definition before we put the patch in of what the role is and making so that we have some way of checking our decisions and evaluating anything that we haven't put in yet.
We did have this on the ideas issue queue. I won't be able to find it right now.
Sure, that's it.
It's just that I don't really know what is it right now. I don't know. As you can see, there are a lot of comments here. So,
but I think what Aaron said basically agrees with what Christina and I said earlier, that we should anticipate making changes, which also Angie said, and it's easier to make changes by adding things. So if we have any contentious permissions, let's leave them out of the initial patch
Sure.
and consider them in follow-up issues rather than go in the other direction.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, we just need to comment on the issue, which are the ones, and just iterate on the patch. I don't think that's a problem.
Okay. So Thomas, can you handle making a recommendation
Yep.
about what permissions this would start with? So a counter proposal or whatever. And
Yeah,
I can handle leaving a comment that says product management is all over this issue. It's an awesome issue and we want it in. And, you know, supporting the idea of putting the least contentious permissions in there first and then adding in individual follow-ups. It sounds like everyone's on board with that plan.
And can we make sure it goes into more than just standard? It'd be great if we can put this in Umami as well. Whether that requires a slightly different set of permissions is maybe another discussion, but if we can get it in the demo profiles and things, so more than just standard, that'd be great.
That was the plan. Once we know exactly what the role contains, we would add it to Umami. This shouldn't be any issue.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Really happy to see that.
Yay, me too. Okay. Sorry. So now we can move on to another one. Sorry about that, Gabor. It's just that issue for what it is has been so hard to get in, and I just kind of wanted to beat it a little more with a dead horse, and then we can go.
Have we got more admin update report stuff to do today?
I think this is the beta blocker that
Yeah.
Gabor was referring to.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
So it's
So
not
this
an
is
update
issue-
module for now. Yay!
I know how much Angie loves those admin.
No, they're important. It's just, I'd love to not look at update module for.
So having worked on those issues myself, I sort of feel that I'm doing God's work here, not because it's interesting, but because it's necessary.
Yeah,
And I think
And
that
we all
Derek
love
is-
you for it.
we do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Benji.
and kudos to Derek and Ted who've done much more than I have. But now let's look at 3066801. This is add hook removed post updates. So the idea is to allow core and contrib modules to remove crufty old post update functions. They can already remove regular update functions. So allow them to remove the post update functions as well. And then the question is what sort of, or the UX question is, what sort of messaging should users see when they try to upgrade and find out that their extremely old version of core or contrib can't be upgraded because the upgrade functions have been removed. Is that clear as mud?
I think so.
I have a question around this. I believe with the Lightning distribution, there are like recommended upgrade points. So if you have a really old upgrade, you're supposed to kind of step through so that you can run the Lightning updates. Is there anything similar in core? I'm not aware of anything, but like if we're removing all of these crufty things, the only situation I could see being problematic is someone's on Drupal 8.1.1 and they're looking to update to whatever's out there today. Is there any information that we give that says you must, like, that force people or tell them at least that they need to stop at intermediate levels in the upgrade path?
There is, and this is the related issue for the hook that's already there and improving its messaging. So I think we settled on this error message. The version of Drupal you are trying to update from is too old. Updating to Drupal 9 is only supported from Drupal version 8.8.0 or higher. If you are trying to update from an older version, first update to the latest version of Drupal 8 and then link to the Drupal 9 upgrade guide. So does that answer your question?
Halfway. Do we do anything within 8 that says, oh, you really should stop at 8.4, upgrade to 8.4, make certain your site's operational, and then go from 8.4 to 8.8, for instance?
Certainly not in core, because core is not removing any update functions until we get to Drupal 9.
Oh, then it's a moot point. That's all.
Conceivably, contrib modules might be in that situation.
I don't know what we could do for contrib modules. Is there a way that the contrib module is able to,
Yeah, so here's the issue that we were asked to look at, and I'm afraid they haven't updated it with the latest screenshots. Maybe if I scroll down to more recent comments, we'll see the current one.
Just real quick, is that the before that we're looking at here?
There is no before, because for this issue, we're talking about removing post-update functions. That's something that wasn't possible before.
Got it. So this was the original step. Like, what are we looking at here? Is this the proposed patch, or is this just a starting point to iterate on? Like, what is the screenshot that we're seeing?
This screenshot is from an early version of the patch, I believe.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't have time to review this earlier today, but I have looked at it over the past few days. So this, I think, was from an early version of the patch. It just says the installed version of the system module is too old to update. Update to a version prior to 9.0.0 first, and then missing updates, system post update blah. And the serious problem with that message is that it's not really actionable. Knowing the name of the missing update function is really not enough. But we've made progress since then, and I'm just, someone should have updated the issue summary before asking for usability review. There you can see my earlier comment.
All right.
So yeah, in a more recent version of the patch, it's much more actionable. Update to a version prior to 8.9.0, comma 8.4.0 first.
I don't understand that.
Neither do I.
Okay. But yes, I agree. Giving them a specific version they should update to would be the ideal thing here, because that's very actionable.
Right, and I think just wordsmithing, I think we can strike prior to 8.9.0 comma. I think
yeah,
that
it would be like
clearer.
Update to version 8.4.0 first would be fine. If that's what we mean. I'm very confused what we mean.
Well, that's what I was actually talking about, is this.
Yeah. So apparently you are updating to 8.9 and you should have updated to 8.4 instead, and that's what the text is trying to tell
Okay,
you.
so I think what it's saying is in 8.9.0, is this true? We're removing all the old update functions in 8.9.0?
No.
No.
Okay. Then what? How would you even get this?
This is just a hypothetical. If we were removing all those updates, what would the message look like if we're trying to update to 8.9.0?
Okay.
But we are not actually.
My brain is
removing.
having a hard time with the fact that that is not even a sentence. But yes, okay. It's just like.
I understand because it's saying, it's addressing my question, which was, if you are on 8.1.0 and I want to upgrade to 8.9.0, tell me that I need to go to 8.4 before I go to 8.9.
Yeah. But then we should say that like you just said it. We say
Agreed.
You must update to 8.4.0 first, and then you can continue upgrading to 8.9.0 or something like that, you know?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. So should I write that out in Slack and we can bike shed it real quick? Where's the Slack?
And a little more background. This issue is adding a brand new hook for removing existing update functions. And so since the hook didn't exist prior, there's been discussion on this issue to add additional information to make this error message possible. So that you can actually say which version you can upgrade to as an intermediate step. On the other issue, the hook is already there, so we can't just freely add additional information to an existing hook, but we have created a follow-up issue to do that, and that'll be more complicated because it's probably going to be an API change. But we'd like to have a similar level of easy to follow prescriptive information. This is the version you can upgrade to get out of your current mess. We'd like to have that in both situations. And we do have the follow-up issues to make that happen. And in fact, I think at the bottom of my screen is Catch added that follow-up issue.
Yeah. So are you saying we need to come up with a solution until that issue is fixed that does not reference specific issue or specific version numbers?
That's on the other issue.
I don't think we can do that because what would we tell people to do? Like look up the API to Drupal.org info for
Yeah,
this function manually.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work.
I do think the names of the missing update hooks are useful in terms of debugging. Like if a person were to upload, I'm getting this error and I don't know why, and put it in the issue queue, we would at least be able to track down, that's because blah, 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 you know what I mean? But ideally the error message would just tell them. So I propose this in Slack. The installed version of $module is too old to update to version $desired version. Update to $minimum version first, which will allow you to complete the update. That would be my recommendation. And then we can do that missing updates, blah, 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 blah.
I would try to make it a little shorter than that, but
Sure.
basically.
What do you want me to do? Because I can edit it to say whatever you want.
I would just leave off the which will allow you to complete the update. I just say update to minimum version first.
Perfect. Love it. Fewer words.
Of course.
Okay. Good. Can we make that recommendation in this issue?
Yes.
Excellent. Now, what's the deal with the other issue?
So the other issue, we can't add information to the existing hook as part of this issue. So we won't be able to give as helpful an error message. It currently says something about installed schema versions. But it's marked needs work for some reason.
Can we not, based on
don't think
installed schema versions, know what version? Like, they follow a naming convention. Well, I guess in core they do. I don't know. We can tell that for contrib or not.
Yeah, we would need to go back and add meta info to past releases of a contrib module. Or well, require that they add the info about the past releases into their current release. I guess maybe.
I mean, if we can't generate a message similar to the one from the last issue, I mean, this is bad, but another option is just give a parameter of return _ message or something and let the module author figure out what to tell people.
We can't do that because the hook is already there. And we have the follow-up issue to improve that hook so that we can do that. We can't do it as part of this issue.
Got it. So we're stuck with, and what do we just get a machine number, a numeric number based on the update function name is what we get.
I think that's right.
Ugh, that's awful. Installed version of the workspaces module is too old to update. Update to an intermediate version first. Oh, that's so bad. That is so bad.
Well, now you're making me feel bad because I thought I improved the wording.
You definitely improved the wording. I'm just saying, wow, that sucks that that's all we...
But
I
to
mean,
improve it, we have to change the existing hook, and we have a follow-up issue to do that.
no, yeah, you're doing everything you can with what you've got to work with. So it's not a slag on you at all. It's like, damn us for not being like, prescient back in like fucking 2005 when we added this hook or whenever it was. So just talking this through for a second, I know we're almost out of time. If I can't update to 8.9, is it reasonable to suspect I could update to 8.8? Because if so, maybe we could say instead of an intermediate version, which could be like I think Gabor gave this example. If you're on 8.1 currently and you're trying to go to 8.9, there's like 7 intermediate versions between those two. Could we make a recommendation to say, try the version previous to this one first? Or is that not necessarily, are they just going to be like, continuing to do that until eventually they're shown it's okay? Like, I guess, yeah. I mean, I guess if there was a Drupal 8.10, and the version they actually need to update to is 8.7, that would not be good because 8.9 would give them the same issue. Ugh, yeah.
If I got a message like that and I tried upgrading to 8.8 and it didn't work and gave me the same message again, I would be annoyed.
Yep, that's very true.
I'm the kind of person who would if I was on 8.1, I would upgrade to every intermediate version because I'd be super scared to go from 8.1 to 8.9.
Yeah, well, you're doing it right. This error message is purely for the people who are doing it wrong, right? They're like, screw it. I haven't touched my Drupal site in 4.5 years, but I'm sure it's fine.
But I mean, technically, shouldn't that be possible? Like, all the update hooks are there, right?
So put it in the context of we're using Composer now. And when you do controlled intermediate upgrades, it can be problematic in its own right. So there are periods of time in which you just try to upgrade everything in Composer. You just do the Composer update all. Right. And because of that, that's why these types of messages need to be present, because it's telling someone that you really are not going to be able to get to where you're going if you don't first do this intermediary step. So trying to figure out, can I do it the last version or the last version, doesn't sound feasible to me from a Composer world perspective. Because you're really
what does Composer tell you if you get into this situation? Not that we want to rely on Composer for sensible error messages at all.
I don't think Composer tells you anything. I don't think you get this message until your code is out there on the server and you're trying to run the update hooks.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't care. Composer is not involved in this.
But can't we, hang on, something about minimum version requirements with Composer. I'm trying to conceptually think about this. Isn't there something we can say like Composer won't let you upgrade to a certain version, or?
Yeah, but that's a different sort of incompatibility. That's, can I install this module with this version of Drupal? What we're dealing with here is, can I upgrade from this old version of the module to the current version of the module?
Or core. Wait, is this just core or is this the contrib?
Both.
No, the core one actually looks good, but the core one we can be prescriptive and we know what the problem is. The problem is Drupal 9 needs you to have 8.8 or sooner. And so the core message is great. It tells you exactly what you need to do. That's awesome.
Okay, sorry, we're on a different issue. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, but we're looking at that second screenshot there, which is contrib. We cannot make any such recommendations.
But we will after the follow-up issue.
After the follow-up issue, yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of out of ideas, like to make it better than what you've got there, Benji. Anybody else?
I wouldn't trust myself if I were maintaining a module to have to manage all of that information correctly. So I hate the idea of having to trust several thousand other developers to all do it individually.
Also, we still need to communicate this best practice of when you remove the post update, and they may not remove it, and I don't even know how many modules have post updates. It's probably not very widespread. So I don't think people would encounter this too much. If they would encounter this for some of the high-profile modules, but not for.
Can we do like? I mean, I kind of agree. I can't think of a better message right now. But is there anything we can do, like link off to release notes or the project page or something that's likely to have more specific information for that module?
Not.
Yeah, I
Agree,
did
Marty?
suggest that since we're adding this new hook, that we add something to the doc block telling module maintainers that they ought to put documentation on their project page. I'm afraid I do have a hard stop. I have to stop sharing and get off this call.
Okay.
I think let's go forward and just say +1 to what Benji put in the issue, because we didn't come up with much better ideas here. And then on the other issue, someone's gonna need to help me with like links to these things because I got a little turnaround there. But copy and pasting the thing from the UX channel for that other one where we have the information we can put in there. So.
Yeah, I think that the best that we could do maybe is to link to the release notes for the release that you are trying to update to, because we know we not necessarily know the version number. It depends on how you installed it.
Well, but even then, like in a situation where it's if we say Drupal 9 got delayed until December, we would end up shipping a Drupal 8.10. And in that case, I don't know that we would necessarily repeat, 8 and 8.10's release notes that, hey, if you're still using 8.1 at this point, you should do that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I can't imagine contrib projects in every release notes being like, if you're on version 1.0, don't upgrade to version 2 if you're on, so I think the best we could do if we're going to link to anywhere would be to link to the project page, because that's where there's either going to be that compatibility information. I mean, you don't have to look far to see that already for like major
Yeah,
compatibility
linking to
with,
the project page in the
this is
message
stuff.
is that's not a bad idea, actually. That's then at least there is a place that every project is guaranteed to have, every contrib project, is guaranteed to have. That would be a place to put that kind of project level warnings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Benji's error message plus the addition of linking to the project page. If that wasn't there, I missed it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. Great. So Gabor, is that everything you need on the beta blockers?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I think we ran out of time.
Yeah, sorry
Thank you.
about that. I get very passionate about admin roles and talking about things that are actual UX. Anyway, sorry.
Well, I think
right.
as a UX.
Oh,
No idea what happened. Anyway, thank you all.
all right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.